Welcome to Out of Chaos Podcast, a discussion based podcast where we try to make sense to the chaotic world we live in. We talk about life, we talk about our business, we talk about self development. Let's open our minds to greatness and grow together. We have some valuable content to share with you all, so stay with us until the end. And remember, you can always share your thoughts and ideas with us on our social media.
Perfect. Today we actually have an interesting topic. We're going to be talking about growing up Latino. So, as if you guys don't know, it's your first time listening, or those of you who don't know us, both Alejandro and I are Latino. Well, I'm first generation Canadian, but my parents originate from El Salvador and Guatemala. What about you, Alejandro?
Same. I'm a first generation Latino. My parents originated from El Salvador.
So you may ask yourself, okay, why do I care about these guys growing up Latino? But we're not really focusing on mostly like what Latinos do or like our culture per se. We want to kind of bring forth the importance of growing up with a different culture in mind, with Hispanic parents or immigrant parents that are a little bit strict, have a little their own ideology from back home, and how they try to apply it to Canadian culture and society, and sometimes it ends up clashing, right?
So growing up as a Latino in Canada, I mean, it's just so different compared to like every other culture, I feel, just because growing up Latino, you have like we have like different foods, we talk differently, our parents teach us a little different compared to like Canadian culture.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, it's just a lot more strict. So for example, like, going out for me was like, it was a big deal, like I couldn't hang out with my friends like past like 4, like right after
4
school.
p.m.
Yeah, like right after school I would have to go home, so.
Yeah.
But that was for elementary school. And then like high school, like coming home like at 5 or 6 was acceptable, but I had to be doing extracurricular activities,
Yeah.
So I couldn't just be going out and just not doing anything, right?
Yeah, and I feel like me and you had different experiences growing up, right? Like, even though we're both Latinos, even though we're from Central America and half from same country,
Right.
I do feel like we have different experiences, right?
Yeah.
We can start from the beginning, I guess. How was your childhood? Like, when did you notice an impact? When did you notice the clash between cultures or the misunderstandings? Like, at what age or?
Oh man, I felt this like right away. Like, so I could tell because I grew like my parents had a store, right?
Yeah.
Where we would sell Latin American products. So growing up in the store pretty much took over our lives, like for all of us, right? So for me, my sister, growing up, like we couldn't do as much as we wanted to, like to do like. I remember joining the soccer team was like a big deal.
Yeah.
Because, it's like, you also had to help out the store, right? And at a young age, I was working basically, like I was minding the till, like I was filling the shelves, I was sweeping.
Child labor.
Legit child labor. That's what I would say, I'm like, Mom, Dad, this is child labor, like I want to live my life.
Yeah.
But I can't complain because it gave me a set of responsibilities from a young age.
Yeah.
And I feel like that has translated to to myself today, So I don't feel like I was robbed of a childhood.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I guess I didn't get to explore different, like, the Canadian culture way of growing up here in Canada.
A lot of it depends, too, on, like, where you're raised, like, where you can kind of enjoy the Canadian culture. Like, I guess if you're raised like in a Latino community, like you're not really gonna get that Canadian like experience,
Exactly, yeah.
So like what like how did you feel? Like where did like an example for me? I grew up my first from Keno Lawrence, which is an area midtown around like closer to Uptown. It's a lot of Italians and Hispanics. So I actually didn't learn English, I learned Spanish first.
Nice.
So I didn't learn English until like grade 1. That's when I started to like actually learn English, even though I was born here. But the thing is, like our community were all Italians and Hispanics, and like Italian is really similar to Spanish, right? The language,
I've
right?
noticed it, yeah.
So like I didn't really have that experience of like Canadian culture because
Right.
all our family, friends, and neighbors
Exactly.
were like all immigrants as well. So
Right,
what about
right.
you?
So for me, like, where we grew up is very mixed. So it was Hispanics, Portuguese, and Italians, and so we all have like a similar culture, because we all kind of like the language is pretty similar,
Yeah,
but and also because we're all like mostly like Catholic as well, so you could tell like the similarities are very similar. But going to school, like in my elementary school, was close to Chinatown. Like it's called Lord Lansdowne, right? And it's basically right on like Spadina College, right? And over there was more of Asians, right?
yeah,
So growing up in there, I felt isolated. Like I didn't really have that many friends, and up until maybe like grade 7 and 8 is when I started like to actually make more friends and
yeah,
get out of my like bubble.
yeah.
Yeah. So all right. So how does it feel to be like half? Because you told me you're half Guatemalan, half Salvadorian. How do you feel?
Honestly, it's been growing up. It was kind of one-sided, actually.
Right.
As you know, like you always tease me about this because you're full like Salvadorian, right?
I do.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm neither, to be honest. But if I had to choose,
Right.
I'm more Guatemalteco
What a traitor.
than Salvadorian.
Traitor.
Yeah, so I mean, and that's basically because of my mom, right? Like
Right.
my mom's side of the family is massive, right? There's like 9 sisters, 2 brothers. And my dad doesn't really like he doesn't really like associate with his brothers as much, and
Alright.
it's just 2 brothers, right?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So in fact, my dad actually lost his accent. You know, the Salvadoran accent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
So I grew up.
Chica voz.
Yeah. So I grew up like super Guatemalteco, right?
Yeah.
And but even then, like I was never fully like Guatemalteco. I went to Guatemala when I was like 1,
Right.
and I never went
But
back.
do you even remember that?
Of course not. So I don't count it, right?
Yeah.
So
I would even say that.
it's so crazy because every time I say it, like I just decide to say like, you know what, I never been. Like I went when I was 1. He's like, oh, so you have been? I'm like, no, it's like I never went.
Yeah.
But whatever. So the point is that that I was never really brought up either or. Like even though I am leaning towards the Guatemalan side, I know little about the culture. I don't really like the food. You know, yeah, it's a little. Please
you like
please don't
pupusas?
cancel me for that. Guatemaltecos, don't cancel me. But no, it's. I'm not gonna say it was hard, but it was. It's like when you associate with Salvadorans, I can't relate. You know, and then they tease me because I'm more Guatemalteco. And then when I associate with Guatemalans, like I don't really relate to them in any aspect because I've never been back home. I don't really know anything to be honest, apart from what my mom has told me, right? So it has been a little difficult. What about for you? Like what? Like my experience is so different, right? Because I've had like my dad's side where he tells me about like the food back home, and it's different from Guatemalan, right? And then my mom tells me a whole different story. So I'm learning from these 2 cultures. So how does it feel to like just kind of like
From
focus on one? Yeah, like
Well, that's for me. Like, yo, I'm actually like a very proud of Salvadorian, right? Like, anybody knows me, like they know that like, right off the bat. Like I'll talk to you about pupusas.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about back home, like like the homeland.
For those of you who don't know, what are pupusas?
All right, pupusas are basically a tortilla, but with stuffing inside. So either it's with pork, cheese, and bean is like the traditional filling, and then we also have like coleslaw on the side, and then we have like tomato sauce and chili, and
I suggest people to Google it.
Yo,
It's worth your time.
Yo, definitely, yo, it's bomb. Everybody that I've introduced it to love it. So if you ever have the chance, highly recommend it. But yeah, on that note, yeah, so like I'm very proud Salvadorian. I always tell everybody. And what I liked about like in my household, like we were only like Salvadorian. It was just that. Well, I guess for myself, I had like one aspect just to focus on, right? Like,
Yeah.
Just I guess I didn't really feel that divide like you probably felt.
Yeah.
So it was pretty nice because I got to learn from like everything about the Salvadorian culture, like like how we make food, like like our breakfast,
Yeah.
like like everything that we eat, like how we act and like the way we talk is very different, compared to other Hispanics. So I like that, and growing up, I saw that like right away because in my parents' house, like store, right, we got a lot of Salvadorians,
Yeah.
but we also got like a whole mix of other like Latinos. So I was able to like differentiate like people's like accent like right away, just because it's like, oh wait, you don't sound like my parents, or you
Yeah.
don't sound like like so and so, like this customer
Yeah.
that's like from Colombia, or this customer like that's from like Argentina.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was like right away I was able to like
But
differentiate.
like that's the thing, right? Like I do feel at the beginning, like when I was younger, I would always like say it was difficult to be from two different because I never identified with either, right?
Right.
And I wasn't Canadian, and I'm pretty dark skinned, so like I'm like nothing. I'm not. I
Yeah.
can't pass as a Canadian. I can't pass as a Salvadoran or a Guatemalteco, right? So for me, it's been such a learning experience because I have learned. I'm not saying like if you're just from one country, you're not like open, but for me, I had to be open at a young age to understand people like from my mom's country and her culture,
Right.
and then my dad's culture. So from such
Right.
a young age, like I wasn't allowed to be patriotic to one thing. I had to be fair with both and with my own Canadian culture too. So that's three. I'm balancing three different cultures,
Right. Right.
right? And I assume it's a lot easier for someone who's just from one country.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of problems, right? It's like people who are mixed, right? They have. I'm pretty sure everybody identifies with this problem, right? So have you ever wondered that, like, or are you just so busy like
Well,
enjoying your
yeah, I'm
one
actually.
country?
I guess you don't really think about it, right? Because it's like I have my own like nationalism and like a little bit of pride, but I mean the way I think about it for you, I guess is like you kind of identify with these problems today, right? Like
Yeah.
today, right? So for me, I guess yeah, like I never really thought about it just because.
It's always like that, man. Like people always like again, like I remember what Guatemalans talk bad about Salvadorians. So what Salvadorians talk bad about Hondureños talk bad about, and it's all the same people. And
Yeah, honestly, at the
and
end of
like
the day.
they're all neighbors, and that was a problem, right? Like my grandma before she met my dad, like she because he was from El Salvador, she assumed things. It's like Romeo and Juliet. They had to run off
Oh
and get
wow.
married. So and like it's so funny seeing that because me being on the outside, right? It's so crazy to see how like people get caught up in all these little conflicts and problems, and that's why I'm kind of happy I'm not
Right.
I can't be patriotic about something because like I'll hear Guatemalans like they'll be like, oh yeah, because Salvadorans this or Hondureños that, but then I hear Salvadorans say the same thing, so everybody has their own side, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just there like I'm like, hey, I don't identify with anybody.
Like I
So
don't want to get involved.
yeah, and I don't have to get involved, right? But
Yeah,
overall, Latinos are a really proud people, right? And that's
absolutely.
amazing. I love our culture, but it's I think it's a problem that like a lot of mixed people have since immigration and migrations and stuff. Like when two people mix and they have a child, and then the
Right.
child doesn't belong to either. It's such a problem because you don't really belong, and that's kind
Yeah.
of that's like my upbringing story that like I always struggled to feel like I belonged somewhere. And it's the thing. On top of that, I went to my middle school and high school was mostly there was no Spanish people, right? There was like three Latinos, right?
Damn.
And
Yeah.
the Latinos that were there were like pretty like white looking. So like I'm the only one that actually looked like Latino, right? So it was very difficult. Like, and even I made friends with them, and they were amazing, but I never got to share my culture. Like, even if I wanted to learn from them, my area was never like full Latinos, or in my high school,
Yeah.
my jobs, they never had Latino people. So I never really fully got that experience. I assume you did though, right? Like you have a
No,
lot of
well, I mean, I got it at home, and I also got it like in when I was at my parents' store,
yeah,
but I never experienced it at school, only up until I went to university. So, cause like every like, well, yeah, my elementary school, like I told you, majority were like Asians,
yeah,
and then high school as well, like it was Asians, African Canadians, and a little bit of everything else. So the majority was always like a different culture. So for me, like you said, I didn't really get to share my culture, and like have like that, we have like the same identity and everything, and it's just kind of not the same.
yeah, yeah.
It's just yeah, like because you always wanted like somebody to relate with.
And that's why when like there's like the Pupusa Fest, or there's like some kind of festival, or the times that I've like coincidentally have like reunited with or participated in events with like our people, like even whether it's Latinos or Salvadorans or something, and to feel like a people, it's such an amazing experience.
Right?
I feel like we sound like such like newbies, like first generation Canadian generation, because I'm assuming a lot of our listeners, like, they're from one country, right?
Yeah.
But that must feel amazing, and that's kind of why we're talking about this, because to feel that like united as a people,
Yeah.
it's probably an amazing feeling, and that's kind of what we lack, right?
Exactly.
But we've also the positive side of that is that we've had to learn to adapt, and I've befriended many, like I have many friends from Somalia, from Italy, from Portugal, and I'm like their culture has become like mine. As you know, I'm a big Brazil fan. I'm like
Yeah.
I'm more Brazilian than Salvadorian almost.
Jeez.
So like I've had to learn to adopt from other people, and I appreciate their food, their culture, right?
Yeah.
But I want to touch the subject on like the biggest issue with our culture, and it's strict parents. You kind of mentioned it at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I don't know about you, but like it is embarrassing. But hey, like we're being honest here, like. Early 20s, I still had a curfew. Like I had to be home like anytime after like 10,
Right.
10:30, like the dad would be calling or whatever, like, hey, where are you? Like it's so embarrassing, man.
It
but
is, yo.
but there are like positives to that too. But
But-
what about you?
So I got a little funny story about that. So, well, I remember my sister. Like, I'll never forget this story because it was just always resonated with me how Latinos are. So I remember my sister complained to my mom one time because I came home at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And I think I was like 18 or 19 at the time. And then my sister, the first thing she said is like, why don't you guys say anything to him? He just came late. Like, he came late the other day at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And then my parents, you know what my mom said? Don't worry, he's a guy.
Oh.
And
Yeah.
I was just like, whoa. Whoa. So I can't believe, like, when my sister had to go through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, she, like, for her going out was, like, a big deal, right?
True.
My parents were really strict, because she was a female. She can't go out, blah, blah, blah. Like, you have to be home back, like, by, like, 10, latest, like 11. And I'm happy, like, she kind of, like, because she's the older sibling. And I feel like the older siblings always get, like, the harsher treatment, you know, when they got to break that, like, curfew and, like, all those strict rules.
Yeah.
And so she had to go through that. And for me, it was so much more easier because it's like, I'm a man. I could come home at 2. I can come home and it was whatever, right? But I feel like in Latino culture, it's just because I'm a guy, I'm allowed to do certain things, right? And because my sister's a female, she's like not allowed to do the same things that I am.
Same.
Right?
Yeah.
So for me, when I saw that, I was like, wow, like I actually like. I always heard about this stuff in Latino culture, but like I'd never until like I only experienced it until like that, like when I saw like going out was like a big deal, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, it was just funny.
Yeah.
And
Well, what about you though? Like, did you have to be home at a specific time? Like, was there?
Well, yeah, my parents used to say like, "Yo, don't come home like later than 12," right? But then they were just kind of like lenient. Like it's just like me coming at 2 was as long as like I wasn't drunk or anything, because they were always concerned.
But like, where do you think where does that come from though? Like, why are they strict? Like, from my mom, like her biggest fear is like obviously you're off doing bad stuff, you know.
Right, yeah.
But like that's like everybody, like every parent has that. But so why are like?
I think it's because they bring that mentality like back from like their like our home countries, and it's like going out late, like in our countries, like it's. You don't do that.
Yeah. My mom always told me like people were home at like 6. You know, like,
right? Like
there's nothing else to do, or like those who were out, right? But I'm like, I would always be like, Mom, let's back home. Yeah. This is like, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. And for the record, I wasn't ever doing bad stuff. Like, nice. And that's the thing. A lot of times that I would be out, right? It'd be like 11:30. I'm like with my friends. Come home, get yelled at, and then I'm like, really, like I'm not even doing anything, but. I'm going to say something like, I am grateful for that, though. I know a lot of people probably aren't. And my parents were strict, but they weren't, I don't want to, like, even though they were maybe unfair at times, I don't think they were overall unfair. Their intentions were good. Yeah. And I learned, like, and it's true, nothing good ever happens after, like, a certain time. Like, and really, realistically.
Honestly.
Unless, like, obviously, like, you're out, like, and it gets late.
Exactly.
Or like you're at a concert or like a soccer game and it just gets late. You go for a pizza and you come home at 2 a.m. Well, fine, right? But like to go out and do something like that late, like it is true, like And I'm thankful for that, for my parents being strict. I really am. Like, obviously back when it was happening, I wasn't thankful, right? But now that I'm older, now that I see,
Yeah,
right,
I
I
mean, it's
really am
yeah,
thankful.
it's different when you're an adult. Like now that we're adults, like we see it from a different perspective, right? Like
Yeah,
I like going back, like growing up in the store, right? Like I never, like I used to say like child labor, and I didn't like working there. But the skills that I learned and the fact that like I was able to learn Spanish like at home and at the store
yeah,
was like an added benefit. Like now that like I'm fluent in Spanish, compared to like most of my like peers that like they barely know like Spanish,
yeah,
and I always tease them about that, like I have a friend like his name is Danny,
yeah.
and I always make fun
Shout
of
out
him.
Danny.
Shout out to Danny, but I always make fun of him because his Spanish accent is just sounds like a white guy.
Yeah.
Like a white guy trying to learn Spanish, and
We
I
love
always
you,
make
Danny.
fun
We
of
love
him.
you
I'm
though.
like, "El habla como un gringo," like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
right?
And it is fortunate that we got to learn that fluency in
Exactly,
Spanish, right?
right?
So I'm grateful for that, and honestly, it's something that like I'm gonna go tell like my parents right now after this podcast. I'm gonna go call them up and be like, "Thank you," but I am very
Yeah, I actually want
thankful.
to give him a hug right now and be like, "Yo, thank you for giving me like everything that they've done, right?" Like, cause when you're a child, like and you don't notice these stuff,
Yeah,
right? And I guess I'm gonna tell my kids that, like you'll remember this or you'll remember that, like how, in a couple of years, like I try to show you Spanish and I try to show you like this right way that my parents brought me up,
yeah,
right? That they were so strict and they still had like, like we had values at home, right? Like we should have respect each other and
yeah.
everything. So that's what I want to impart with my kids too. So that's why I feel grateful, my parents, and how they raised me.
All right, so I kind of wanted to touch upon the expectations that our parents had, and many people can relate to this because it doesn't just it doesn't pertain to only Latinos. It's a lot of like parents overall, right? Especially immigrant parents. They have serious expectations of us, and that kind of leaves room for a lot of people to kind of rebel,
Yeah.
to not to feel stress, anxiety, go down the wrong path. So can you touch upon that a little bit?
Yeah. I remember growing up, so I don't know why. I always wanted to be a firefighter. I always just thought it was cool, and I also had like this backpack, and I had like a fire truck in the back.
Sick.
Yeah, I was 6 years old, right? And I thought I was so cool, and I wanted to be a firefighter. But I remember my parents saying like, "Yo, we didn't come to Canada for you to be a firefighter. You could have done that back in El Salvador. We came here so you would be something.
Yeah.
Like you could be a dreamer. Like you could do anything in the world, but like aim high, right? So my expectations were just like like you're here, and then my parents were just like, yo, we gotta be like up here, and I feel like it did set me up to be like think higher, but later in life. And what I feel like I was just like like an innocent child, like I wasn't even thinking of that, but I think it's because my parents are more really direct, right? So I guess I never thought of that until like I actually matured, and until like I was in high school. My parents were just like you should start thinking about university. You should start thinking about what you want to do in life. And it's just for me, it's just like I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm just living my life, living my best life. What can I do? At that point, I just loved playing soccer as well. So I just wanted to be a soccer player. But my parents again were like, no, you gotta be something like higher. You gotta be like up here. Because we came to Canada, we have these expectations for you.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess like I just I never thought of that, and then.
And it's such a good thing, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not even a bad thing for our parents to always want us to do better,
No.
right? But the problem becomes when it's a thing that you have to do, or else you're not successful.
Right.
And I think that's one mistake that a lot of immigrant parents make, because I've seen it happen over and over again, and it's gonna happen till the end of time, right? so many people don't ever like they pursue a career because of their parents, and then
Yeah.
they end up leaving, right? And that's the biggest issue, right? And for my parents, they weren't really, they weren't like they didn't get really like involved in my. Obviously, they wanted me to succeed,
Yeah.
but they kind of trusted me that I would choose, and whatever I chose, they kind of supported me, right? But for the parents that were a little bit strict, it's damaging, but it's also it's good. It's both. It's a balance, right? Remember, this show is about balance, right?
Yeah.
And sadly, some of our parents don't really know that, because once your heart is in it, like, because this is my child, I want the best, they don't really see clearly.
Of
Because
course.
sometimes what's best isn't for you to be a doctor, it's for you to be like a writer, or to be like a teacher, right? Like, and maybe that's what you feel happy in, as maybe you won't make as much money, but it's what they'll be good at, and they can make a positive impact in their community or in their country, right?
Yeah.
And that's more successful and valuable than being something that you were expected to be, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what, do you agree?
No, I agree entirely. Because at least I found my footing. Like by the time I went to university, I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And at first, I was a geography major, but then after, I noticed, I like to do like more like urban stuff. So I actually wanted to become an urban planner. And like the more courses I took that were urban related, I fell in love with it more and more. And now I'm happy that, I'm like, I love what I'm doing. So, I guess my parents' expectations, kind of set me up in the right way.
Yeah.
But I think the approach could have been different,
Yeah.
right? Because like your parents, they approach it much different. Like, what do you think? Like, do you feel like you were?
Again, like, you're never gonna have it perfect, right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes I do wish my parents would have been like, yeah, do this, like, or like kind of been on me, but I'm pretty sure if that would have happened, I would have been complaining about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's always like that. So we make do with what we have. And this is why it's important, right? Whether you have parents that support you or you don't, you have to find the support in yourself as well, and in
Exactly.
other people. Like, I would tell my mom, like, Mom, I want to be a teacher. She'd be like, okay, mijo, like, then be a teacher. And that's it. And that was good enough. But when the exams came, when I was stressed out, when I wanted to quit university, be like, I can't, whatever, I had to literally, like, sometimes pray. I would ask my professor for help or my friends. And that's what helped me. And even my mom, too, like, she would help me pray as well, right? So, like, these are the things that, like, I would do to succeed, because it's not wishful thinking to be like, oh yeah, like, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a doctor, and then just go do it. It's a lot of sacrifice. A lot of my
Exactly.
friends that I went to university with me, like, more than maybe 70% quit, midway, at the beginning, or right near the end. So um I even though I didn't have that, like, constant support, I had that initial support where my mom was like, you can do it, I believe in you. And
Nice.
that was the seed, and I had to do the rest, right? And for those of you who maybe never had that parental guidance or whatever, you don't need parental guidance.
No.
You have to find that within yourself, because your
Exactly.
parents or your friend, they're not going to help you get the grades. Like, they're going to maybe motivate you, help you study, but at the end of the day, it's going to be you that has to pull yourself from your bootstraps, and get up, go do the essay, go do the exam, sleep early, study, and get those grades, right?
Exactly, bro. And that's where like the motivation comes in, Like once you start doing what you love, right? Like that when I started doing what I love is when, I actually found like who I am as a person. Like I love learning about this. And geography was good, like don't get me wrong, I like geography, but it just wasn't like I wasn't happy. And then when I went into the urban studies program, that's when I actually like noticed like, yo, I love what I'm doing, and I'm not complaining about doing these essays or
Yeah,
doing the readings. So that's when like, for me, I found about my own character, and I feel like a lot of people need to do that sometimes because you need to find about like who you are yourself, right?
exactly.
Once you can identify that, you become a much happier person, and you become more satisfied. And at the end of the day, yeah, like I there was sometimes I didn't want to do these essays, right?
Yeah,
Even though for my
exactly.
program, right? I'm like, yo, I don't want to do it, but I pushed myself, and I pushed myself, and then I actually saw the result at the end, and it's the best feeling in the world when you get an A or an A plus, on your final grade, and you're just like, wow, this like it was all worth it,
Yeah,
right? So you just have to push yourself, find the right motivation, and keep yourself happy. But like it's gonna be a bumpy road, but you'll find it. That's for sure.
100%. I agree. And again, like we're not bashing. If you've had parents that support you all the way, that's amazing. Like
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing to have it easy. You know what I'm saying? Or
Nah.
easier.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
easy. Like
Absolutely.
easier. It's I commend that. Like it's amazing. And again, at the same time, I'm not bashing my parents. Like shout out to them. Like if it wasn't for them, I don't think I would have made it. They helped me. They gave me the space. Even like let's say if I wanted to be alone, or they would leave me alone, and that enough was help, right? And again, at the end of the day, like doing what I love, which is teaching, and especially like because I'm that's what I'm doing, right? ESL teaching, and also for new immigrants, teaching adults and people who want to be in this country.
Nice.
It's so motivating, it's so inspiring, it's so uplifting, like, and hearing that, like my parents, both my mom and dad, like they feel proud. They've told me, right? And if that's what makes them feel proud, then that's all that matters, right?
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, it's what you feel comfortable doing, and it's maybe it won't make you as much money, but life isn't about money, and
Exactly.
life isn't about like trying to achieve Mount Everest at the peak. That's what people say, like, oh, you gotta climb Mount Everest, right?
Yeah.
As an analogy, but not really, man. Like, you don't really have to. You don't have to do anything. You have to take control of your own life. And I was actually telling a friend of mine this, that once we get to a certain age, like, we make the rules. I'm not saying like in society. I'm saying like in our own life,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like a bird, right? Like the bird raises little birds, and then once it's old enough to fly, it flies on its own. So our parents did an amazing job raising us. They were strict, they were not strict, whatever they did. And the point, there comes a moment in our lives where we have to make the rules of our own life. We
Exactly.
decide whether we become Catholic, Christian, atheist, Buddhist, whatever it is. We choose that road, right? And going back to like the Latino culture thing, that's where sometimes those it clashes,
It did.
because
Yeah.
Latino parents are, and maybe immigrant parents are a little too involved in your life. I don't know if you agree with that. Like, I've seen it a lot.
Yeah, like I said, right? Like when I wanted to become a firefighter, like my parents were not supportive of that.
Yeah.
And mind you, like I was just 6 years old. I mean, I felt like they could have been just a little bit more supportive. Just go with the flow. He'll probably get out of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still happy. That they pushed me to think higher because I went to university and I
Yeah.
found my footing. So you can see it as a positive and a negative. But at the end of the day, like I still got something good out of it, right?
Bro, no parent is perfect. Nobody's
Exactly.
perfect, right? And that's the thing. Like, and you can even see like what you said, the silver lining, where even if maybe they weren't as supportive, like in real life, not everybody's gonna be
No,
supportive. Like
exactly.
in your job, let's say I have my dream job, and let's say the boss has it against me, and he doesn't want to see me succeed. What are you gonna do? Right? Like, oh, but your parents, they supported
Yeah,
you,
exactly.
they helped you. Like, oh no, welcome to the real life. People are gonna put you down and mop the floor with you. So everything is a learning experience. Let's say you have parents that didn't support you. There's people that I know that hate their parents, that don't have a relationship with them, that have a really bad relationship with them. And what if that happens? So what about them? So being successful ultimately this depends on you and your drive, right? Because in
Exactly.
the real world, there's no babying, there's no like handouts.
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, whether they helped us or not, we had to fill in the end of the puzzle, fill in the blanks, and figure it out on our own. And we're
Yeah,
still doing that, right?
exactly. Because if you don't make your own path, I feel like you're never gonna become the person who you should be, right? You're always gonna be looking for other answers from other people, or you're gonna be dependent on like other people. And personally, for me, like everybody should become their own person, their own individual, and like learn like to be their own person, right?
Yeah.
So you could actually spread your wings, become that butterfly, and just live your life how you're supposed to, blossom into the person that you need to be, because it's a long path. Like you said, life is hard. You got to choose your heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
No, and that's the thing. A disclaimer: we're not telling you to like rebel against your
no,
parents or anything, right?
no,
Just
no,
we got a
no.
disclaimer because people always misunderstand a lot of things, right? And
Exactly. Yeah.
and to be clear, it's not that you have to rebel. It's just that sometimes, like life isn't easy, and God forbid, like tomorrow you don't have your family anymore, and it's
Right.
just you. It happened to my dad. My dad, he came to this country when he was 14, 15,
Right.
and a year later, his mom died. He was alone.
Wow.
He was alone. Like his dad stayed back in El Salvador. He told me, he's like, I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know anything. He's like, I was babied my whole life. You know,
Damn.
and he was like the golden child, right? So he had to learn at 15
Right.
years old. What happens? Do you have on Mother's Day? Do you have a mom to go to?
No,
No, life
no.
hits you really hard.
Yeah.
So it's not that we're trying to make anybody rebel. It's just that sometimes, from experience, at least from mine, like parents could be a little bit too involved, right? And that doesn't let us grow, right? But that's why in the first pilot episode that we did, I discussed sitting down with your parents and being like, listen, this is what I want to do. I just need you to support me. You know,
Exactly.
like I'm always gonna respect you. You should always respect your parents. You should always love them, right? No matter what. But that doesn't mean to put up with a lot of things. It doesn't mean to do everything that they say, because they're not God. They don't know the pathways to life. They might know you, but only at the end of the day, only you know you, and you know yourself. And like I said, today it can be one thing, and then tomorrow it could be something else.
Exactly. You just gotta find your own path, right? Like, going through life, yeah, you're gonna go through ups and downs, but like that's the moral of the story. I feel like, you gotta explore and you gotta make mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, then you're always gonna be just like in your comfort zone. And trust me, being in your comfort zone is not where you wanna be. If you wanna like, like get up there and like become somebody, right?
Yeah.
So I feel personally like, that's how I feel. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, if you want to make your parents proud, just do, first of all, be a good person. Number
Yeah.
one, like, cause let's go back to that. Let's go back to the basics. Like, if you want to make what's the point of doing everything your parents tell you to do and respect them and whatever, if you're gonna be doing out there doing bad stuff,
Exactly.
like,
right?
So at the end of the day, whether you're a nobody, even if right now you're listening to this and you're basically quote unquote like nobody, but you know the foundations of respect and love, you're doing 10 times better than half the world or more, because
Exactly.
everybody has lost that. I know so many people that say, yeah, I love my parents, I love my parents, I love my family, I love my wife, I love my husband, but they're doing stuff they're not supposed to. So how about that? How about
Right.
go back to the beginning and learn respect and what really honoring your parents is, and then you can actually make them proud.
Exactly. And you got to learn like these values, this respect and everything at home, right? It starts at home. With the
Exactly.
person like you yourself. So then you become the person that you want to be. And you also learn these values at home because your parents teach you, right? So and like going back to like us and like growing up Latino, I'm happy, that my parents show me these values,
Yeah.
this respect that I have for, everybody, because if I wasn't taught that at home, I'd probably be like, like I'd be such a hater. I'd probably be like, I'd probably be such a disrespectful person,
Yeah.
and I thank God, like, my parents raised me right, that I have respect for everybody. I listen to people. I'm very understanding, and like that all started from at home. So
Yeah.
you can tell, like all this like expectations and everything. Slowly, they kind of guide you to become the person that you are. That you are today.
Especially when you have that, and then you have your own, like whatever you learn, whatever you bring to the table, and then you unite it.
Exactly.
Wow, like
Yeah.
it's right, but that's the thing, you have to unite it, right?
Exactly.
But
and
no, that's amazing. What a interesting conversation. I know a lot of people can relate, and honestly, that's a wrap for today's episode. If our podcast brought you value, please consider subscribing and sharing with your friends. We would love to hear your thoughts on our social media handles on Instagram at Out of Chaos Podcast and YouTube at Out of Chaos. As we know that chaos is unavoidable, but we're here to shine some light on the craziness of the world and bring some clarity on the topics that we discuss here. So catch you guys on the next one, and see you guys soon.
all right, take care.